Good afternoon. This is Mariana Mitchell, and I'm happy to share with you today my week 3 discussion board, which is theory in action, taking a real life scenario that I'm actually dealing with in my organization and how the public administration theories apply in handling this situation. So, of course, I decided to pick something that's recent, that's up front on everybody's newspaper, that's making headlines on a continuous basis, and that's dealing with sexual harassment in the workplace. Recently, the state of California passed legislation that goes above and beyond current legislation. Currently, we have AB 1825 that requires all supervisors of employers with 25 or more employees must be trained in sexual harassment avoidance. What SB 1343 does, which is going to be activated as of January 2020, is that it takes that to another level. It ensures that all employees, regardless of their status, whether it's part-time, full-time, temporary, seasonal, that they too be involved in training and sexual harassment avoidance. So this is in reaction to a number of the public instances of abuse of power, of harassment in the workplace, of people just taking it too far. So again, the scenario, we have to address this issue in our organization, and so which takes us into the next part of it, which are the three themes that I identified in reviewing this scenario. So the first one is going to be the process. You know, how do we integrate a training of this level into our organization? The second one is going to be how do we make it meaningful? How do we ensure that it's not just us checking a box, that it's actually making a difference in our organization, that we're reducing the risk of things like this happening, and that it's a learning opportunity for all of our employees. And last but not least is the issue of compliancy, ensuring that we are meeting the rules and laws that apply to us as an employer, as an organization, to make sure that we're remaining compliant in this state mandate. So in reviewing the process, some of the theories that came to mind is Luther Gulick's POSCorp. We've got the planning. We have to plan out when and how often and who gets invited to which of these trainings. We have to organize it within our current organization. How do we implement this without impacting all of our staffing and our programs? Again, how do we coordinate something of this size? Do we need to budget additional funds to ensure that everybody's getting trained in an appropriate manner? How do we maintain files and report back to ensure that we're remaining compliant? And on the same end, Weber's ideal bureaucracy came to mind because, again, we're talking about the authority and the formal rules and regulations and making sure that everything takes place in an appropriate manner. And then on the back end, kind of thinking about his idea of impersonality. If we were impersonal, would we have some of these issues? So again, this is just talking about the process of implementing the state mandate of SB 1343 in the workplace. Moving on to the next theme, which is how do we make it meaningful? So first off, I think of Mary Parker Follett and what she talks about working with as opposed to over employees. So again, how do we make it that it's a learning experience? How do we engage employees in being proactive? And the solution for ensuring that that sexual harassment or bullying or harassment of any kind doesn't take place in the workplace. How do we make it a positive learning experience? And then the other theorist that comes to mind is Maslow. We have the hierarchy of needs. If we can go through this training and make this training meaningful to all of our employees, we can make sure that they all feel safe in our work environment, that they don't have to fear harassment in the workplace, and then can go on to continue towards other aspirations of, you know, feeling accomplishments and so on and so forth. So again, this is just how do we make it meaningful, especially because we know we have to do it. How do we take it to that next level? So last and not least, I have compliancy. So in thinking about compliancy, the first thing that came to mind was McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. It kind of always feels like the state of California has this feeling that most of our employees they're Theory X by management, because employees will, you know, work to not do work, are likely to do wrong just because they don't want to do right. So again, kind of thinking about you know, tightly controlling what the employees do. They mandate these type of trainings, and so it's in the effort to prevent things like harassment happening in the workplace. But again, it's with the idea that, you know, employees may not always be thinking of what's in the best interest of the organization. The next thing that come to mind is Lindblom's science of muddling through it, just because it feels like this new legislation is definitely a good example of incrementalism, being that the original legislature that passed AB 1825 was intended just for supervisors, because supervisors manage employees and they should know how to handle these situations should they occur, or how to prevent them from happening. But now it's clear that, you know, there needs to be additional levels. So we're ramping up the training that's necessary because of this situation through SB 1343. So again, perfect example of public policy and incrementalism. And last but not least, I have Simon's bound rationality. So it kind of seems like when we're dealing with complex problems such as sexual harassment or harassment in the workplace, that we have very limited knowledge on what's actually happening out there. And so, you know, as a legislature, the state of California, they're looking out for the best interests of all employees. And sometimes they're functioning on imperfect information. They're functioning on just, you know, the things that are capturing the headlines. It's like in a classroom, everybody has to pay the price for the bad students. So it kind of feels like, you know, this bounded rationality sometimes leads to suboptimal decisions, such as how difficult is it going to be for us to maintain compliancy with seasonal part-time employees who work less than 20 hours a week, or seasonal employees who only work for us for 6 months out of the year. So again, you know, definitely see the benefit of training in the workplace, and especially for such a sensitive item like this. But again, this is a complex problem, and, you know, having a state mandate, it's intended to help us deal with it, but we're still having to figure out how to make it work for us. So that's just my brief overview of the scenario I wish to present for this week. Here I have a couple different links that are available to you should you wish to read up a little bit more on SB 1343 and the requirements for employers for over 25 employees. And then also, I sincerely hope none of you have to deal with this, but if you're ever in a position that you have to report something, or you see something or witness something and you wish to file a complaint and don't feel comfortable going to your own employer, we have the Department of Fair Employment and Housing that has a formal complaint process that can definitely help you work through some of those situations. So again, I appreciate your time and wish you all the very best.